In this video, we will fetch paginated data, but not from your usual Postgres database. Instead, we will fetch it from Redis. First of all, let's take a general look at what we will do in this video. So you're a regular user that stores his to-dos in a database. Each to-do has an ID, a title, and a description. Each time we add a new to-do to our Postgres database, we want our Redis instance to get updated with the newly created data. We simply want a function to be triggered. We're using Supabase, so they are called edge functions. This function adds our newly created to-do to our Redis database. And whenever I, as a regular user, I visit my to-do list, I get the paginated data from Redis, not from my main database, which is hosted on Supabase in this case. So let's proceed with the code example. First of all, we should have two repos, one for the edge functions and one for our Next.js application. Let's take a look also at the database. We have a to-dos table that has an ID, a title column, and a description column. Let's go back to our edge functions repo and do dino.serve. Before proceeding, the logic goes like this. First, we should determine which table we want to trigger our edge function at. To know what is the type of the payload that I will get inside of my edge function. What this dino.serve does is basically create an HTTP server that will serve incoming requests. Before proceeding, let's go back and create our Redis instance. Let's call it test app. Let's select Germany, Frankfurt, because it's the closest region to me. Let's hit next, pay as you go. Yup. And yeah, it's successfully created. Let's leave it like this for now. We'll get back to it later. So we will give this an async function that takes a request. And the JSON of this request is basically the payload. And this payload has a record. And this record is basically my newly created row. So let's define a type first of the to-do. It has an ID, which is a number, a title, which is a string, and a description, which is also a string. And let's destructure the ID. So next, we need to create our Redis client. As you see in the Dino upstash Redis docs, we need to import Redis from this link. So we'll copy paste to our code. Paste, and let's initialize our clients. And this client takes the URL and the token. We'll get back to setting our URL and token as secrets inside of our database. But now, let's do dino.env.get, and we will call this secret Redis URL, and this token basically Redis token. So to fetch our paginated data, we need to get use of sorted sets inside of Redis. Each set has a name and a set of members, and each member has his own score, which basically rank him in the sorted sets. And this member should be unique. In our case, it's the to-do cache key. And since we're using Supabase, which uses Postgres under the hood, we have the ID as an incremental integer, so we can use it for the score. In your case, if you're fetching products, for example, you will fetch the products based on the general rating or the creation date or something from your choosing. So in our case, we are just doing a tutorial, so that does the job for us. So now let's do promise.all to update our sorted set, and in the same time create our key value pair. So we do client.zadd inside of to-do sorted set. We'll give it the ID as the score and the to-dos-id as the member. And also we create our key value pair with the exact same cache key. And now when this block of code finishes, we basically need to return an OK response. We also need to wrap this inside of a try-catch block in case something unexpected happens. So the default behavior is log in the error to Sentry or whatever platform you're using and return a new response and return a status of 500. Yeah, and we forgot to mark this as a to-do. And now let's deploy our edge function to our remote database. To actually do this, we need to have Docker running and the Supabase CLI installed. So we do Supabase functions deploy Redis add to-dos as we've called the function, and let's hit enter. Let's select which database we want to deploy this function to. Let's select test and we wait. And yeah, as you see in here, it's successfully deployed. If we actually take a look at our database, we will see that it's successfully deployed. Now we need to add the Redis URL and the Redis token secrets. Redis URL, here is the value, and the Redis token, here is the value. And one final next step, we need to go to our database, webhooks, and actually create a new webhook that runs the edge function on the selected table. Let's call it create Redis cache, and let's select the to-dos table, and event insert and updates, because Redis upserts the data by default. And let's choose superbase edge functions, and okay, everything is set up properly. Create the webhook. Now let's add some mock inputs to see if our edge function is actually running. I've generated this using the postgres.new AI. Let's go to our SQL editor. Nope. Insert the to-dos. Yeah, this one. And let's take a look at our table. Yeah, they're successfully created. Let's take a look at our Redis instance. And boom, as you see, all of my to-dos are successfully created. You can even see the sorted set of to-dos. Yeah, it has all the data that we've added. And now let's go back to our Next.js project and actually fetch the to-dos and see if that works. So we'll start by importing Redis from upstash/Redis and create our Redis client. So we'll specify this from env here, and what this does is automatically grab the URL and the token from your environment variables, so you don't need to manually specify them. So let's go back to our instance and copy our secrets. Let's go back to our envs. Let's paste them, and yeah, we're good to go. Now let's create a function and let's call it fetch to-dos. So this is an async function that will take the page and the items per page as arguments. So let's start by defining the start index that will initially be 0 and the end index that will initially be 9. We need to fetch the first 10 to-dos, so we'll start from 0 to 9, which is 10. What we'll do next is get the first 10 to-dos from our sorted set by doing redis client.zRange, which takes the sorted set name, the start index, and the end index. And this option basically means that we want to fetch the data from the start. Then we'll check if the length of the to-dos key is 0, so there are no to-dos, and next we will fetch all the to-dos with those keys, and finally return the to-dos. It is that simple. Now let's export our function fetch to-dos. So let's go back to our client component, and for this we will use a package that's really good and useful, and it is called Nux. It's basically a type-safe search param state manager for Next.js. Now let's import the use query state from Nux, and we'll name the state page and set page. It's basically like the use state hook. Let's give it a name of page, and since page will be an integer, we'll import the parse integer. So we'll parse it as an integer with a default value of 1. So we'll start from page 1 and so on. So now we'll import the use query from stack query. Let's give it a query key of to-dos and a dependency of page. So each time the page changes, it triggers the use query to refetch the data. And basically the query function is the server action that we have defined in this file. Let's create a variable called items per page and give it a value of 10. And this use memo hook prevents it from getting created each time the component re-renders. Let's grab the data and is loading. And if the use query is loading, we'll basically return loading. Before rendering the data, we need to first check if the data is present. Then if there is no data, we return no to-dos found. And here basically we're displaying our to-dos. We've added a function for previous and next. Previous function is disabled when the page is 1, and the next button is disabled where there is no data or the length of the data is lower than the items per page, which means it is the last page that we have. We have no next page. And simply here we're incrementing or decrementing the page. And now let's see if this actually works. Let's hit run dev. Let's visit the localhost. And yeah, as you see, it's actually working. Let's hit next, page 2, the page is updating, next, next. Okay, it's disabled because it's less than 10 to-dos. Yeah, previous. And yeah, that is actually perfect. So if you like the video, give it a like and leave a comment, and see you in the next one.